Thanks very much. I'm sorry, my voice is very compromised, and thankfully most of the questions I wanted to ask you have been asked and answered very well. Thank you very much for your work. I just wanted to, it's just a comment around the thing about curtilage. There are some buildings where services are provided that the definition of 100 metres from the entrance still doesn't satisfactorily address the question of protest. I can immediately think of Holles Street Hospital. So you could be 100 metres away from the entrance and still outside the window, where a woman might be receiving care or a doctor might be providing care or whatever. And I know when the Gardaí were here, they had a real problem with the definition. But yet, the definition is very clear in the Electoral Act. And as somebody who's contested many elections, as everybody else in this room has, that is constantly implemented. And all Gardaí are familiar with it. You cannot go within 100 metres of a polling booth to distribute literature, or you'll be warned. And if you do it again in another polling booth up the road, you'll be told, you were just doing that down the road and I told you off. So they have experience of implementing legislation with that definition and all of the Gardaí understanding exactly what's required. And we've seen that actively. You see it actively at every election. I've had, pensioners giving out leaflets for me innocently, being repeatedly warned by the Gardaí not to be doing that, So I just found their response on these things a little bit, I don't mean obtuse, but picky, picky on the safe access zones, but not. They're very well capable of implementing the legislation that contains curtilage and the definition of 100 metres, etc. And there are, as I say, venues that would still not benefit from the 100 metres from the entrance, end of. I want to just to alert that. I'm also a bit confused about why warnings given, taking into account the argument made by Alice Mary there on relay protesters, because that's what they do. They do it here all the time to us. They're doing it at, certain protesters are doing it in certain venues with refugees in them now. Why warnings can't be recorded? Like why Garda A can't record, I've just given Maurice O'Connor a warning, and it goes somewhere that if Maurice O'Connor appears somewhere else, they're all able to say, you've been warned already. I don't understand why that can't be done, because I would be worried about that relay nature that would allow them to circumvent legislation. That's just, I wonder, could you have a look at that again, if it's possible? And could you clarify for us what the penalties involved are? Is there immediate fines, or is there what penalties would people who breach safe access zones be facing? In terms of, I know you've gone into the difficulty about the guards wanting to go to the DPP, and I totally get you're correct in being concerned about that. We'd all be concerned about that. But what are the penalties that just so the public and ourselves are clear?
Do you want to start with the penalties?
The penalties are set out in Head 8 of the general scheme. Now, there hasn't been any real, I don't think, deviation from that in terms of the drafting, other than under heads, in relation to Head 6. I mean, another point that the Gardaí made in relation to the original Head 6 was because we were treating it as a summary offence, they wouldn't have the necessary powers of investigation. So the fact that it would be covered now by Section 10 and eventually by Section 23 would increase the penalties for that offence it up to, I think it's 7 years potentially on indictment for a first offence, which would give them, which makes it an arrestable offence, which gives them the necessary powers of search, arrest to investigate it. So that was one of, I suppose, of the considerations in using the existing law for harassment. That was one of the other considerations. But in terms of penalties, I don't think we have deviated from the penalties set out in the general scheme, and they are contained in Head 8 of the general scheme.
On the issue of curtilage, we're getting down to the real street level view of what the 100 metres is, and there aren't too many instances where what you describe, Hollis Street, even Hollis Street, I would suspect, because it applies to all entrances, with the one side onto Marion Square and the other side down Hollis Street itself, I would think, and we'll be able to map this very, very closely, that it will protect the full perimeter and the windows, as you say. But it's a very it's an issue that we will look at and pay attention to as we develop the mapping of the hospital sites in particular.
So at the moment, you don't think it's a...
I don't think so. Hollis Street's quite exceptional, just being so on the street, but that, I think with the two entrances, that it won't have a sort of an area where people could protest directly in the window of any of the things. But we will look at that, Deputy. And thanks for raising it. The issue of warnings has been just really quite difficult. It's just something that was advised to us by external counsel in terms of the proportionality, the implementability of the Act, and the kind of the fairness to any potential offender, to clarify that they are in danger of breaching, of breaking the law. We're looking very actively at the advice from the guards to lean into the Criminal Justice Public Order Act, and in a sense, if we were to go down that way, and we'll be getting advices in the immediate days ahead on it, there is kind of a warning in how the guards engage with people. They do explain the law, they do explain the safe access zone, if this is what we were doing, and they're charged ultimately with failure to comply with a direction from the guard. So there's an element of warning there, but it's the recording or documenting of a warning and retention of that warning is the difficulty. That's not done at the moment.
Is it not done under the Public Order Act?
It's not done under the Public Order Act, no.
Okay.
There's a lot of interaction, and I'd say in a lot of cases there is a warning delivered, but it's verbal and it's not intended to be documented. And the guard then can press and say, I've warned you, and I'm now charging you with failure to comply with direction from a guard, and you're basically busted.
But that wouldn't cover a protester.
It doesn't cover what Senator Higgins raised about a relay, an organised, say, 8 or 10 people sequentially harassing someone. But we'll talk to Department of Justice and guards again about the point raised here about whether the harassment legislation that exists at the moment is sufficient, the number of convictions that are sort of achieved under it, and so forth, because, as you say, there's wider issues now around sort of protests at people's residence and so forth.
And one last thing, appreciate all those answers, thanks very much. We would look for reassurance on the question of workers' protests outside these centres. We absolutely need that. The other thing, the last conversation we were having there about data and the collation of data through the HSE, I actually think that's quite important, and it's important that the HSE do it as well, because it's interesting there, you probably have a more comprehensive list, but everything you listed there, the leafy suburbs of South Dublin, and it's quite possible for the same people to be doing this, do you know, and more than likely it is, moving around. So I think it's important, the collection of data is important. And lastly, you were asked earlier on, but I'm not sure that we got an answer. Have you any idea when the whole process will be completed?
Not to be in any way evasive, we are working on this as fast as possible. There is ongoing engagement, and we are as anxious, and the Minister is very anxious to see it completed as quickly as possible. There are a number, I suppose, of outstanding issues that we need to bottom out with the OPC, and as soon as that is done, and they are aware and we are aware of the urgency around this, as soon as that is done, we would hope to finalise the bill, hopefully, yeah.
Okay, thanks.